Now, look, I don't watch too much of Alex Jones's show. I've been on his show recently. We're just in Austin. But, man, there's a meme going around about how he's been right about so much. Now, truth be told, I think there's a lot of things that Alex is very, very much wrong about. But I remember back, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. No, this was like 13 years ago. I think it was like 2009 or so, when Alex Jones was talking about BitChute, which was this company that was producing these subdermal microchips you could put in your hand. And it was a radio frequency identification, could be used to call up your information in a database, be used to open doors and things like that. You may have seen this story a few weeks ago, but it's still gaining more and more traction. And I wonder if this is finally the moment when these conspiracies they keep coming true, and now we're going to see them all come to fruition. We have this story from Fox Baltimore. Implanted microchip could be used to verify COVID-19 vax status. But truth be told, they were saying very similar things in mainstream news a decade ago about this microchip, and people just don't want to use it. It's not convenient. It doesn't help anybody. But there are people right now in Sweden that are getting this implanted, and it contains their vaccine information and other identification. And when I saw this story drop in a local news outlet, I thought to myself, these conspiracy theories just keep coming true. You know, last year, they said that there weren't going to be vaccine mandates. There was conspiracy theorists that were pushing it. Well, here we are. Chicago, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. have all just announced, right before the holiday, that they're going to be implementing vaccine mandates. In fact, in Chicago, the mayor said it is designed to make life harder for you. Bill de Blasio said quite explicitly, we're tying your paycheck to whether or not you get the vaccine. And this is a year ago that they were saying this will not happen. We now have a Twitter post, an editorial that says the Great Reset is the plan for, restarting the economy after COVID, according to fact checkers. The Anti-Defamation League said that very idea was a conspiracy theory. The World Economic Forum said the Great Reset Initiative was a real thing. Many of us pointed out that these powerful elites have an agenda, that they plan to exploit this crisis, and they're going to be changing our economic system, and they call it the Great Reset. The Anti-Defamation League said that's not true, it's a lie. Or they try to frame it in such a way to make it seem like it's a lie. And then today they say, yeah, actually, that is their plan for restarting the economy. So I just wonder, as all of this stuff is happening, how much more of what Alex Jones has talked about will turn out to be right? Because, when he goes on Joe Rogan's show and he's like, the cell phones and the human-animal hybrids and we're all just like, oh, geez, this is so crazy. And now this keeps happening. Look, I don't think it's proof that Alex Jones is right about everything, but certainly it's starting to put doubt in the minds of his critics when they're kind of like, well, maybe. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. But how is it that we're now dealing with a story about these microchip implants? I remember 10 or so years ago, Alex Jones was talking about Real ID. Real ID was a real thing. It's happening, if you're not familiar with it. So then I see these stories about the vaccine mandate expanding to all these other cities. And I think we're going to see hard lockdowns. I think what they've consistently done, the politicians, mostly the Democrats, is they'll start slow. And then once you accept it, they'll hit you with the they'll hit you with the hard right jab or whatever. You get death by 1,000 cuts. They do these little things, and then the big powerful blow to end the match. And what I mean by that is they're coming out now saying just get your vaccine and everything will be fine. They said just wear your mask. It's just 2 weeks. And every step of the way, when people comply, it just keeps getting worse. I wonder if we're just in some grand experiment to see how much people are willing to take. Maybe that's the point of this whole simulation, to put human beings into undue stress and then see at what point they'll finally snap. I don't know, but it feels like we're getting close. Now, I want to read to you about the microchip story, and I want to talk to you about how the media manipulates. And ultimately, I guess the thesis here is that conspiracy theories keep coming true for whatever reason. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to help support all of the work that we do. And, I got to stop for a second and just say, Alex Jones on his show said maybe he'll just stop and just never come back because he's kind of done with it. He's over it. And I feel it, man. I feel it. And I'm sitting here. I was thinking about, we're going to do the shout out for timcast.com. We're working really hard to build this media space to challenge the manipulations and the lies. And boy, is it tough. It really is, because you even have conservatives who are just willing to comply and just say, yeah, no one's going to do anything. You know what I mean? And look, I don't want people to go out and do anything rash. I'm just talking about nonviolent civil disobedience. We're seeing people in New York stand up and say no. But if I'm talking about store owners and small business owners, I'm talking about police. If they just said, I'm not going to participate, we'd be done. We would be done in 2 seconds. But these people, they just keep complying, and it gets worse because of it. But I won't. The Daily Wire won't. And if you want to support my work, go to timcast.com, become a member. This is what fuels the entire machine, all the work we're doing, and it's greatly appreciated. You'll get access to Timcast IRL members-only segments, as well as a lot of other members-only segments from different shows. And you're going to help us employ more and more journalists. Let's read this first story and talk about the implants before we get into the propaganda, because you've probably been told that implanted microchips is a conspiracy theory. Well, here it is. Implanted microchip could be used to verify COVID-19 vax status. I think it's important to point out this could just be sensationalist trash, because it's so much easier to just use your phone app and have the QR code than it is to actually implant something in your skin. That's invasive. People aren't going to be lining up to get these big injections unless there's serious undue pressure. They go on to say microchip technology invented by Swedish startup company Epicenter is now being presented as a possible way to carry around a COVID-19 vax passport under a person's skin, according to a viral video. Yes, that's called a subdermal microchip. Beep, boop, beep, your vaccination record has been verified, says the caption of the video posted to Twitter by South China Morning Post. Remember when we were told it was a conspiracy theory that they would use microchips to track your vaccine status? Now we're here and they're saying it's all true? Not that anyone's actually going to mandate this. I don't know, but I would not be surprised. Imagine showing your COVID-19 passport with just a flash of your arm, the video says. The video explains the microchip uses pre-existing technology the startup company has already developed to employ near-field communication and send data to any compatible device. Smartphones are listed as an example. Implants are a very versatile technology that can be used for many different things, says Epicenter's chief disruption officer, Hans Slowblad, however you pronounce it, in the video. Right now, it is very convenient to have a COVID passport always accessible on your implant. Maybe the reason the microchip implants didn't take off 10 years ago was that there was no practical reason to have it. Opening a door didn't matter too much to people, and cell phones were more convenient. But as they keep pushing and pushing and pushing, people eventually just say, please, I will do anything you say. And if we're already at the point where people are willing to get several injections to comply, what's one more injection? The final injection. This will give you back your freedom and we will have peace. Yeah. Mayor Lori Lightfoot announces new Chicago COVID restrictions. Proof of vaccine testing indoors. Chicago COVID update. New mitigation efforts aimed at stemming spread of Omicron variant. I don't believe you. I don't believe these people at all. They say the city of Chicago is imposing a wide-ranging vaccine mandate that will affect bars, restaurants, gyms, and more after the first year. You get it. You get it. Same as like we see in all these other cities. But let me show you what's special about this one. Mayor Lori Lightfoot has no problem pulling down the mask and revealing the fascist. Mayor Lori Lightfoot tweets, to put it simply, if you have been living vaccine-free, your time is up. If you wish to live life as with the ease to do the things you love, you must be vaxxed. This health order may pose an inconvenience to the unvaccinated. And in fact, it is inconvenient by design. They're spitting in your face. They are spitting in your face. Healthy people, people with medical conditions preventing them from getting the vaccine. They're not just inconveniencing the unvaccinated. They're inconveniencing the medically disabled. They're inconveniencing people with allergies. They're inconveniencing people who have already received other treatments that bar them from getting access from taking the vaccine. They don't care. But the main point here, as we see here in Chicago and now Boston mayor lines up vaccine mandates amid pushback from city workers. As we see here with Washington, D.C. D.C. Health has ordered additional 5 million rapid antigen tests, yada, yada. They will be requiring January 15th at 6 a.m. Establishments will be required to verify that patrons ages 12 and older have received at least one dose of the vaccine. All of the people who said it was not true and it was a conspiracy theory, they were wrong. It's not a conspiracy theory. And it is very likely the vaccine mandates will sweep the entirety of the U.S. I don't care if you're in Florida, Texas, or otherwise. Florida may be a holdout. Texas maybe. But I have to imagine it's going to be very difficult to get West Virginia or Florida or these other states to abide by a vaccine mandate. And I think you would be dangerously close to outright civil war if that were the case. And I know people don't care to hear it. Some people acknowledge it. Many people don't. It doesn't matter. I don't care. You don't have to like my opinion on the matter. But you tell me what happens when people are being told we are going to inject this into your body. Otherwise, no food for you. We're already seeing nonviolent civil disobedience, which is a good thing. The people who protest, they get arrested. That's how it works. I think generally mass noncompliance is the most effective way to deal with this. And I hope that remains the principal strategy. Like I said, imagine if everybody who lived in D.C. just said, I don't care what the mayor says, and went about their business like normal. There would be no vax mandate. People would just carry on with their lives, and the despots would fail. But it seems like too many people are just complying. They don't care that this is not legal or not constitutional. They just comply. That scares me because I think you're going to get crazy people who resort to violence. And I don't know what else to say other than, man, I certainly hope not. But let's carry on. Let's talk about this conspiracy here. Thomas Massie, he wants Congress to assert constitutional overrule to this medical apartheid, he said. And I really don't think it will happen. I like Thomas Massie. I just don't think it'll happen. We have more vaccine mandates at Cal State will mandate students to get the COVID-19 booster shots. So the 2 shots, irrelevant. Now you got to get the 3rd and eventually the 4th. And who knows how often this will keep carrying on. In Spain, they're going to be requiring masks outdoors. In Austria, they're going to be fining people 3,600 euros, and they're hiring inspectors to go track people down. All of these things were said to be conspiracy theories. The vax mandate, conspiracy theory. The boosters. I love this example. Famously, Dave Rubin said they're going to bring out boosters, and he got suspended on Twitter for saying it. Now, it's a fact, and it's in our faces. Austria has an outright vax mandate for all citizens, and they're hiring inspectors to hunt you down. What will this lead to? The economy will continue to crumble. Biden's economic ratings are worse than Carter's. All right, let's go back to the first story. Implanting microchips. When the vaccine first came out, many people said this is an excuse to get you microchipped. And then all of a sudden these fact checks emerged, and they targeted very specific claims which were more absurd to make it seem like this story was just a wild conspiracy theory that would never happen. Let me show you some of these crazy crackpot fact checks. From the BBC, May 30th, 2020. Coronavirus. Bill Gates microchip conspiracy theory and other vaccine claims fact checked. Here's someone wearing a mask. It says, Gib Gates, don't pay the bill. They say, first up, a conspiracy theory about the vaccines. It claims that the coronavirus pandemic is a cover for a plan to implant trackable microchips, and that Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates is behind it. We found no evidence to support these claims. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation told the BBC the claims were false. And I think it's fair to say they are. See, the problem is when someone comes out and says something simple, like this is a perfect crisis they could use to mandate or drive microchipping, people then take it to an extreme place. And this is my biggest problem with conspiracy theorists. It becomes so easy to debunk the entirety of the claim because you sound nuts. So when there are issues, the 2020 election pertaining to voting in the park or changing rules, things that have factually happened, and we talk about the Time magazine article, the shadow campaign to save the election, all that stuff actually happened and needs to be addressed. But then you get people coming out saying, in Venezuela, in Germany, there's a shootout, and they believe these crazy things. Excuse me. They push these crazy things that just make it so no one will listen. And so when you come out and say something as sane and as kind of shocking in many ways that, yeah, there is a push for microchips under your skin in your hand to track vaccine passports. People are going to go, oh, my, here we go, the microchips of Bill Gates and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, geez, man, I don't know anything about Bill Gates doing any of this stuff. There is a Bill Gates microchip thing pertaining to birth control or whatever. I didn't find, I did some cursory research. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on Bill Gates' history. It doesn't matter. There are companies that want to do this. Maybe they won't do it because it's just shock content and it's inconvenient and the phones make more sense. But they said microchip vaccine tracking, not real. Bill Gates is not planning to microchip the world through a COVID-19 vaccine. You see, they conflated a lot of this. And I will stress, a lot of people did think the vaccine itself was some weird microchip. It was stupid. But they conflate several things all into one, and then it makes everyone sound crazy. Is Bill Gates planning to microchip people through a COVID vaccine? No, I think that's absurd. I think it's patently absurd. Will special interests citing the need for tracking vaccination encourage microchipping? That is literally happening right now. I just showed you Fox Baltimore. Here's one. Factcheck.org. Conspiracy theory misinterprets goals of Gates Foundation. Yeah, we get it. Here we have one from BBVA Open Mind, Technology Under Your Skin. 3 challenges of microchip implants from April of this year. They go on to say as technology continues to get closer to merge with our bodies from smartphones, blah, 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 blah. And then they say in Sweden, thousands have had microchips inserted into their hands. The chips are designed to speed up users' daily routines and make their lives more convenient. Accessing their homes, offices, and gyms is as easy as swiping their hands against digital readers. Chips can also be used to store emergency contact details. Advocates for the tiny chip say they're safe and largely protected from hacking. This was well before vaccine passports. This is in April of this year, before vaccines had become very widespread. They were just, it was early rollout. But let's go back in time. Singularity Hub wrote in 2009, will your ID soon be a microchip under your skin? Yet another sci-fi milestone is upon us. Now, this was back then when Alex Jones was talking about this, and they said he was crazy. Well, here we go. USA Today, 2017, you will get chipped eventually. Interesting. They say you will get chipped. It's just a matter of time. In the aftermath of a Wisconsin firm embedding microchips in employees last week to ditch company badges and corporate logons, the internet has entered into full-throated debate. Religious activists are so appalled, they've been penning nasty one-star reviews of the company. On the flip side, seemingly everyone else wants to know. Is this what real life is soon going to be like at work? Will I be chipped? It will happen to everybody, says Noel Chesley, 49. But not this year and not in 2018, maybe not in my generation, but certainly that of my kids. Well, here we go. Is this the crisis to exploit to get people chipped? Now, I certainly think it's absurd to believe that there's I guess one of the conspiracies is that COVID was released intentionally so they could have a crisis to exploit and then inject people with chips. You're getting a little too in the weeds, man. I don't know about any of that stuff. Certainly, we can talk about lab leak. We can talk about error. We can talk about Fauci and irresponsibility. And we can certainly say that there are people who want humans to be chipped, sure. But all of that, no. You don't need to you don't need to connect those dots. All we need to say is there's a crisis and it's certainly being exploited. And one of the groups that are exploiting it have chips to sell people. So there you go. It's almost a profit incentive, right? Gene Muster, an investor and analyst at Loop Ventures, is an advocate for augmented reality, virtual reality, and other new tech. He thinks embedded chips in humans, on human bodies, is 50 years away. In 10 years, Facebook, Google, Apple, and Tesla will not have their employees chipped. You'll see some extreme forward-looking tech people adopting it, but not large companies. The idea of being chipped has too much negative connotation today. But by 2067, we will have been desensitized by the social stigma. I've talked well about this. And Neuralink. Elon Musk, everybody loves that guy, right? Except the left. But he's talking about getting Neuralink implants in people by next year. I should say this year, because we're basically about to enter 2022. He's saying that it's going to be in people, helping people who have paralysis and other neurological degeneration or diseases. So we're there. We are here. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. As I described it as a story. My grandfather told me that when he was younger, they thought social security numbers were insane. That the government would have a number on you that you needed was nuts. And then he said, you were born into it. You don't know or care. And that's what's going to happen. Or I should say that's what's extremely likely to happen. I still think it's very likely that implanted chips are just too inconvenient for people. Cell phones do so much more, and everybody has to have one. They're addicted to these tracking devices. But just maybe, people will start adopting them. There will be mandates for them. They will say, you have to get your chip. Already, look, desensitization is happening. They're saying, get your vaccine. And if you want to, that's on you. You go to the doctor, figure out what makes sense for you. But they're telling people the government has mandated this injection. How far away are we from the government saying, we're going to mandate another injection, a microchip? It's for your convenience, it's a vax passport. Now, that's a little bit of a leap. Here's what I think will happen. I think we will start seeing companies. First, we see the vax mandates in all of these places in Chicago. There's a problem with counterfeits. They'll say, okay, everybody should have the app. Get the app. It tracks that way we don't got to deal with counterfeits, right? Then they'll say, well, the app is inconvenient for some people, so you can always try Vax Pass Plus. They'll say, get your Vax Pass Plus. Now, you just get it embedded in your hand. Vax Pass Plus Max. If you watch South Park, you'll get the reference. And they'll just be like, look, you want to stay up to date? The microchip, you put it in your hand. It's super convenient. It works for a whole bunch of stuff. In fact, it has your wallet on it. And we can use this for tracking your Vax Passport. And you can enter buildings. Just that easy. Get Vax Pass Plus today. So maybe not this year. Maybe not next. Maybe not the year after it. Or maybe it'll happen that fast. What's going to happen is with all of these cities mandating vaccination, in my opinion, it's going to become increasingly inconvenient for people to carry around these large cards. People have already stated the cards don't fit in our wallets or our bags, and they get destroyed and they're easily lost. So then they say, well, get the app. But then you're going to hear stories, people saying, my phone got stolen. What do I do? It's so inconvenient. And then they're going to say, have you considered upgrading to Vax Pass Plus? Have you considered getting your microchip? You'll never lose it. It's always there. How easy is that? You've already gotten a bunch of injections for the Vax Passport. What's just this one more? And it's easy. It can always be taken out. It's no big deal. Once we get to that point, they'll start offering it to kids. Do you want your kid to have the Vax Pass Plus? Think about what might happen if they're kidnapped and we want to verify identity. What happens if they get in a car accident? We need to figure out who they are. What happens if your kid passes out and we don't know their medical history? And they may be allergic to some medicine and the doctor might want to give it to them. They could just scan the Vax Pass Plus. And then your child will be safe and there will be peace. And then everyone's going to drop to their knees and say, I will do anything you say. Or maybe we're Luddites. And maybe this is inevitable. I think Neuralink is inevitable. I think humans combining their brains with a network is inevitable. I really do. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying, humans want to stimulate their carnal desires. And that's what we are, and that's what we get. People want to watch porn online. They want to play video games all day. They want to trigger that dopamine. They want to get that rush. They're driven by it. And so people develop addictions, be it drugs, alcohol, food, sugar, gambling, or otherwise. Video games, man, they give people that release. They complete a task and their brain says, you did it. You get it. Reminds me of that Star Trek The Next Generation episode. You should check it out. I think it's called The Game, where everyone's wearing these headbands where you're trying, it's an augmented reality game where you're trying to throw a disc into a funnel. And then when you figure it out, you get a dopamine hit and they're like, oh, but then you just chase after it and you do as you're told because you don't want to lose that rush. And they become brainwashed and addicted. Basically just turns them into zombie slaves for this alien or something like that. You should check out the show. It's a great show. But I do think we're heading that direction. There will be pockets of resistance, but here's what will happen. These people will have less access to resources. So let me explain some basic math and artificial selection. Take two populations of mice and put them in, little houses. Then you have, or actually, let's put it this way. You take one big thing full of mice and you have a big thing of food. But the only way to get to the food is to endure a painful electric shock. Well, here's what will happen. Most of the mice will figure out the button, they'll walk up to the button, they'll hit it, and it'll open up and food will come out. Or they'll get access, they'll be able to climb into a room where there's food. And they'll eat to their heart's content and then come down and go back into their place. And then here's what will happen. Eventually, the button will induce a shock that's very painful. There will be some mice that are unwilling to endure that shock, and there will be many mice that are willing to endure it. You'll see many of these mice will just endure the suffering because they desperately want to eat. Other mice will not be willing to endure that shock, and they will not be as likely to eat. The ones that get access to the food are more likely to reproduce, and the ones who don't are less likely to reproduce, and thus, given a long enough period of time, the math becomes obvious. Those who comply with the painful shocks become accepting of it, and it becomes a part of the baby's lives, and they all just go on with it because that's how you have to get food. But the mice that are like, I won't do it, I refuse, or I can't endure this pain, they die off. So here's what I would see in the U.S. With the vaccine mandates, it's going to be harder and harder for regular working people who don't get vaccinated to survive. Now, they'll survive. They'll have good lives. I mean, life's not bad. I'm just saying it'll be harder for them. It'll be harder for them to go to bars to meet people. Their friends will be like, hey, we're all going to the bar. You want to come? It's like, I can't, dude. I'm not vaccinated. And they're like, get vaccinated. They'll be like, dude, I'm not going to do it. And then you won't be able to participate. You'll be less likely to meet people. You'll be a very different kind of person and maybe go off and live somewhere else. Now, from that, there can be a few different things. A complete divergence between red and blue states. Red states are going to say, no, rural areas, you can't really enforce this stuff. Farmers are going to have access to their own food. And maybe what this really results in, blue states going nuts and setting up border checkpoints, and red state people can't get into these states. I think we're just headed towards civil war. That seems to be the most likely. In West Virginia, I can go to restaurants, don't need a mask, don't need vaccination. I can go to the casino, thousands of people all sitting next to each other, coughing and breathing and doing whatever, no masks, no vaccines. In fact, when you walk in, it says, take your mask off because they want to see your face. They got cameras everywhere. But people will, they take their mask off, they go inside, some people put them on. Nobody really cares. Now, maybe these red states will eventually adopt these draconian policies, maybe. Or maybe red states just never do because there's no willpower to enforce it, and the people here will reject it. But the blue states are doing it, and people in these cities like it. I mean, they don't really, but they're such spineless cowards. They're unwilling to fight against it. Not all of them, but a lot of them are just so pathetic that they're going to say, okay, fine, I guess I'll give in. Instead of just being like, nah, ain't going to do it. Ain't going to enforce it. Do what you will. I think many of these people will give in, and those that don't will be destroyed, forced to leave. So ultimately what I see happening is these Democrats are going to use the iron fist on those who refuse, and many people will flee the cities, and the divide between red and blue, whatever you want to call it, will start to get worse. In 2020, the lockdowns were really bad. It was crazy. In my backyard, when we were in the Philly area, we had a little fire pit, and we'd sit outside and we'd roast marshmallows sometimes, or, cook some meat or something. Not really for the most part. We just have a fire and we'd hang out. Ian loved starting the fires in the fire pit, and we would just go in the backyard and chill and hang out. We had our own space to skate, so I wasn't super worried about it. We had a mini ramp and a little flat, and I was skateboarding. And I was like, man, it must be crazy to be in New York locked in that cubicle, because even where we lived, they said you couldn't go outside. But eventually I said, I'm not going to sit around and wait to see the expansion of this. Because you know what I thought? You know what I figured? I was like, they could shut down the bridges. They could, it's a peninsula. We can't go anywhere. I'm getting out. We thought about where to go. Florida, New Hampshire, Texas, Maine. And I was like, I think West Virginia is pretty good. We're close enough to D.C., but far away enough from it. And being in West Virginia, and the periphery, I should say, because we work out of Maryland, is you got freedom. And so ultimately, that's what we decided to do. Now someone who's always lived in cities, I was surprised to be like, man, I can't believe I'm really going to West Virginia. Like, there's very few people who live in this entire state. But you know what? There's freedom, and I can flourish. And my friends can, and other people we've hired have moved out here, and no masks, no mandates. We can go where we want, eat what we want, do what we want. Now, apparently, we can't go to D.C. You want to do anything, they got vaccine mandates starting January 15th. That, to me, is really incredible. I, as someone who was always kind of center-left, city, Democrat kind of person, over the past few years have said freedom is more important. And so now here I am in the reddest, one of the reddest states, second most Trump-supporting state in the country. So that's what I think is going to happen. Hyperpolarization will become something substantially worse than you realize. New York will effectively be a foreign country. What's happening is this country is being ripped asunder. It's going to turn into a bunch of warring nation states. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But already it's like California is indistinguishable from West Virginia. They may as well be different countries. And thus, seems to be where we're headed. But I can at least say a few things definitively. Man, Alex Jones, you got so much right, didn't you? You got so much right. I can see the frustration. How long he's been ranting about so much of this stuff. I guess the problem is a lot of the stuff you said just sounds crazy. You know, we talked about microchips back then. We're still kind of in a similar place. We'll see what happens with the microchips moving forward. But honestly, it's crazy that you've got so many people saying, like, didn't Alex Jones say this is going to happen? Man, that's nuts. And all of these conspiracy theories they claimed weren't real. Here they go. And I'll show you right here. This is from Phil That Remains. He says, I remember last week and the Great Reset was a conspiracy theory. Now they just say the Great Reset is the World Economic Forum's proposal for post-COVID economic recovery. They said it was a conspiracy theory. The ADL says the Great Reset conspiracy flourishes amid continued pandemic. They said, since first emerging in the spring of 2020, the Great Reset conspiracy has gained traction in both mainstream and fringe circles alike. Adherents warn that global elites will use the pandemic to advance their interests and push forward a globalist plot to destroy American sovereignty and prosperity. However, there are more outlandish blah, blah, blah. I mean, sure, the most extreme version of it. But the Great Reset is real. And they kept calling it a conspiracy theory. Well, here we go. You know what? We'll see how things play out, I guess.